Amen. Dr. Greg Popcak here, and welcome to the 43rd episode of the Beatitudes. We're talking about leading family service. Now, in the Liturgy of Domestic Church Life, there are three rites. Each one is associated with a different mission that we receive from God in baptism. The first mission we receive in baptism is the priestly mission of baptism, and that's where we consecrate all the stuff we do in daily life by putting a little bit of God's love into those things. The second mission is the prophetic mission of baptism, and that's where we remind each other and call each other to lead godly lives by our word and our example. And the third mission that we receive in baptism is the royal mission of baptism, where we reign with Christ by serving with Christ. The Liturgy of Domestic Church Life teaches us to live these three missions, where the rite of Christian relationship teaches the priestly mission of baptism. The rite of family rituals teaches the prophetic mission of baptism. And the rite of reaching out teaches the royal mission of baptism. Now, I've done series on each of these earlier episodes of the Beatitudes podcast, so you can check that out if you'd like to do a deeper dive into each one of these practices. But this week on Catholic Home, we've been having a lot of discussions about how do we encourage a generous spirit in our kids? How do we encourage our kids to develop that heart of service that comes with Christian discipleship? And also, just some challenges that parents have had when kids push back or say they don't want to do this thing, or, wondering how much I should require my child to help in different situations. So I'm just going to do a brief overview of the four practices that make up the rite of reaching out in the Liturgy of Domestic Church Life, and talk a little bit about how, as dads, we can take point in making those things happen. So the four practices that make up the rite of reaching out, and there are four practices that go with each of the three rites in the Liturgy of Domestic Church Life, but the four practices include serving each other generously at home, number one. Number two, being a blessing to others from home. Number three, being a godly family in the world. And number four, serving together as a family in our parish and community. So let's go through each of these and how dads can take point in this. So serving each other generously at home. Christian service isn't just something we do once we leave the house, right? If we just sort of put on service and virtue as a coat when we leave, we're missing the point, because it's not a role that we play. It's a state of being. Christian service is part of who we are. We reign with Christ by serving with Christ, and we become Christ through those acts of service. And where we need to learn that most is at home, right? And so as dads, we should be starting that conversation every day with our kids, just saying, hey, let's all talk about one small thing we can do to make each other's day a little easier or more pleasant. You might have that conversation in the evening as part of your bedtime prayer ritual. You talk a little bit about how can we take better care of each other tomorrow? How can we be a better team tomorrow? What do we need from each other? And then we bring all that to prayer and ask for God's grace to help us to be there for each other and to be the family he's calling us to be, and really serve each other and take care of each other so we can build a stronger domestic church by showing up for each other. Another example is just looking for ways that we can leave a room better than we found it, right? As a Boy Scout, right, I learned that you never leave a campsite unless you've looked around and seen, how can I make this campsite better than I found it? Well, same thing is true in grown-up life. When we leave a room, we should never leave a room before we maybe straighten something up, wipe something off, put something away. Leave the room better than you found it. We want to model that as Catholic dads. We don't want to wait for our wives to tell us to clean something up or put something away. We want to lead that. We want to show that virtue of Christian service, of servant leadership. When we walk into a room, we put something away, we clean something up. We don't make a big deal out of it. Why is this mess around? Why is this pillow on the floor? Why is this paper? We just straighten the pile of papers, put the pillow back on the couch. We show the thing, and then and then by our example, and we also say, hey guys, remember, before you leave, look around and see if there's something that you need to put away or pick up or clean up a little bit. How can we leave this place a little better than we found it? So those two simple practices, making sure that as dads, we're taking the lead in servant leadership in the household by encouraging each other to look for little ways that we can make each other's day easier and more pleasant and be a better team to each other, and making sure that we're looking for little ways that we can leave each room a little better than we found it, and encouraging our family to do that too. Second practice, blessing others from home. We don't have to leave the front door in order to be a blessing to our neighbors and to make a difference in the world. This could include simple things like as dads, leading the charge to periodically, maybe once a quarter, collect gently used toys or clothing or other objects that we are no longer enjoying. And then we can share those things with other brothers and sisters in the Lord who might need them by taking them down to the urban mission or to the drop-off place for the St. Vincent de Paul Society or other worthy Catholic charity or other charities in our neighborhood. That would be one example. Another example is leading hospitality, making our home a warm, welcoming place to host people for dinner or for a game night or for praise and worship time. And we're inviting, people. Of course, we talk to our wife first. We don't surprise our wife with, hey, we have 3,000 people coming over for praise and worship tonight. But by taking the lead in asking, hey, when can we have some people over for some godly fun and fellowship? Another simple example, looking for ways to be of service to others. So, for example, we have a place in our neighborhood called Friendship House. And they have a refrigerator on their front porch so that anyone who needs a sandwich at any time can go and open the fridge and take out a sandwich. And mostly it's stocked with peanut butter and jelly because it lasts. And so families in the area get together and make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to stock the Friendship House fridge. And so, the kids and the parents all get together. They lay out the bread, they spread the peanut butter, the jelly, they pack them up, they take them down to the thing, and the kids put them in the fridge. And it's a really nice way to make a difference from home. These little things, if we look around and we can even have part of dinner time conversation, we can ask the question, hey, has anybody noticed that anybody in the neighborhood needs some help? Or any of your friends' parents need some help with something? Or what's everybody going through? How could we make a difference? Is there any small thing we could do to try to cheer them up or let them know that we're here for them if they need us? And maybe then you bake some cookies as a family, or you make an extra meal for that person, or as a family you go over and you cut their grass or shovel their walk or rake their leaves, just because. And we're looking for those little ways as a family that we can serve as a domestic church, our community, by being a blessing to others, even from home. The third practice, being a godly family in the world. Now, this takes the campsite idea I was talking about before from Boy Scouts and applies it to people more specifically. How can we leave the people that we meet as a family when we're out and about better than we found them? So when my family goes out to dinner, do we make sure that we look the server in the eye whenever she brings us our food or we're placing an order? Do we say please and thank you? Do we use her name? Do we treat her like a person or just like a vending machine? When we go to a store, are we the family that holds the door for the people that are coming in behind us? Or are we the family that runs everybody over on the way into the store? And how do we encourage this idea? Take a minute before you walk out of the car and say, hey guys, it's really important for us to try to leave everybody a little better than we found them. What are some ways that you think we could do that in the restaurant, in the store, at the park? Let's talk about some ways that we can make sure that we can make a positive difference by leaving people better than we found them. And just talk about it for a minute. Generate some ideas so that everybody's aware and mindful of the need to live out our Christian mission of service in these little kind ways. The fourth practice is serving others as a domestic church. Now, there's nothing wrong with men serving with a men's group and women serving with a women's group and youth serving with the youth group. That's perfectly fine. But we also don't think that service should divide domestic churches as much as it does in the life of the church. We should be looking for opportunities to be a domestic church and show up together to serve either in our parish or our community. Now, a couple of qualifiers on this. If you have a family that is particularly young, you got 6 kids under 6, you've got all that you can handle in just making sure that your marriage and family life is strong. That is a ministry. Right? Service to your domestic church is service to the church. St. John Paul reminded us that as the family goes, so goes the church and so goes the world. If we, because the family is the building block of the church, we can't build a strong church on crumbling foundations. So you taking the time that you need to create a strong marriage and family life is ministry to the church. So if your family, because of the stages your kids are all in, or the stage of life that you're in, or the needs that your family has to draw closer to each other, those take precedence. And if that stops you from doing more service outside the home, then so be it. But if you're in a place where you're wondering, well, how could we serve a little bit more? Then it's a good idea as as the dad in the family to really sit down and say, let's talk about this. God is really calling all families, all of his domestic churches, to try to make a difference in the parish, in the life of the community. What are some ways that we could do that? in an organized way. Maybe we volunteer at a soup kitchen or at the Pregnancy Help Center, or we volunteer at the parish doing something. Make sure that whatever you do is developmentally appropriate for your kids, that your kids aren't being placed in any kind of danger or where they're being made to feel uncomfortable. But to do have that conversation. And I would suggest to you that we've gotten some questions on the CatholicHOM app from parents who will say, well, what if my kids don't want to do it? Like, how do I force them? It's not so much a matter of forcing. It is a matter of requiring. And what I would say is that if you encounter resistance at first, ask them, well, if you don't want to do that, then what kind of service would you like to do? So we don't make the service the option. We make how we serve as a family. And you might want to have a conversation, too, about what gifts has God given us? What interests do we have? And how could we use those gifts and interests as a way of building out service that is rewarding for us? It makes us feel like we're using what God's given us to make a difference. Because when you do that, when you approach this question from that lens, that's how you start to identify your family charism. A charism is a way that we use our gifts to build up the body of Christ that really enriches us and helps us to feel like we're really cooperating with God's grace. It's not just doing random good things. It's doing the mission that God's given us in the way that God's given us to do it. So as we really have that conversation about, well, what gifts have we been given? What blessings do we have? What talents and interests do we have? And how could we use those to build the kingdom by serving as a family in our parish or our community? We're really witnessing to the ways that we reign with Christ by serving with him, which is the whole point of the rite of reaching out. By doing these 4 practices, we're encouraging family service in a way that's holistic, for want of a better way to put it. And instead of just seeing service as a project that we do to satisfy the requirements of, our religious education program, we see service as part of who we are as Christian people, committed to making a difference in the world, using our gifts to be a gift, living as men and women for others, as St. Ignatius of Loyola put it, where we are truly committed to that missional dimension of our Christian faith in our family life and in our dealings with everybody in the world. And I will say this one last point about serving together as a family, doing charitable work as a family. When we show up as a domestic church, parents and kids, to do some act of service, people aren't just blessed by that act of service. They're blessed by the witness of love, that this family showed up together to do this thing and really enjoyed each other's company doing this and enjoyed giving themselves to others doing this. It's a beautiful thing to witness to the power of God's love in our homes by serving together. So if you've got questions about this, I really encourage you to continue the conversation on the questions and coaching channel of the CatholicHOM app. If you aren't part of the CatholicHOM community, I invite you to download the Catholic HOM app. It stands for Households on Mission. That's CatholicHOM, Households on Mission. You can get it for Android or iOS, and we hope to see you as part of that conversation as we encourage each other to be great Catholic dads, servant leaders in our strong domestic churches by living out all the practices of the liturgy of domestic church life.